Good morning, Ridgefield families. Welcome to our presentation on math placement at the middle school level. My name is Corey Gillette. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, and I'm joined today by some of the representative math placement team. So my colleagues are going to go around and introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the presentation.
Hello, I'm Eric Undell. I'm the 612 Math Science Supervisor.
Morning, everyone. Tim Salem, Principal of Scotts Ridge Middle School.
Good morning. I'm Myra Gerchek. I am the department leader and 8th grade teacher at Scotts Ridge Middle School.
Good morning. I'm Marianne Goldstein. I'm the department leader at East Ridge Middle School. I currently serve in the role of math specialist. So I am teaching some 8th and 7th grade classes as well as some math lab classes.
So welcome again to our presentation on the math placement process in middle school. So here's the purpose of our presentation today. We are going to describe the goals and the process that took place to get to this math placement process. We want to build an understanding of the different course options that are offered in grade 7 and grade 8. We really want to emphasize the different possible math pathways that are available for our students as they progress through mathematics in middle school and high school. We want to communicate clearly the math placement criteria. And then a structure that we've used in this new world is that we shared out a Google form with our families when we announced this workshop and gave the link, the YouTube link to this workshop. So that form continues to be live. We had some parent questions that we got prior to this presentation, and then we can collect parent questions during the presentation. You can also put questions into the YouTube link, YouTube chat, I believe, and we can pick those up and try to answer those at the end. But please put your email attached to any questions, just in case we're not able to catch your question in time. So this winter and spring, we created a K-12 representative math committee. So all of the placement processes from 5th to 6th grade and then across middle school have been studied by a representative group of teachers and administrators and math leaders across the district. We wanted to continue to make sure that our math placement process is clearly communicated and that we have all stakeholders' voices in that process. So our shared goal is to create a process that is equitable for all students, responsive to the changing learning models that our students experience this year, because this is an unusual time, and then representative of the required skills as well as the learning behaviors and dispositions. And you'll hear us talk about this when we describe the different math courses, because it's not just about the content that kids are going to encounter, it's the learning behaviors of the mathematicians. And while we recognize that those learning behaviors change over time, we do use that as a criteria for entrance. And that's also something that we coach into with our students in the different levels. So now we're going to talk about the different pathways that students can take in their mathematical journey through middle school and high school.
Good morning. So I would like to tell you about our middle school courses and pathways. They have been carefully designed to make sure that students have an opportunity to learn conceptually and deeply. Our curriculum ensures that all students have opportunities to develop their critical thinking skills. And what's very important to us is that there's flexibility in our pathways and opportunities for movement. Placement is very important to us. We want to make sure that students are put in the class where they will be appropriately challenged and learn best. Okay, we want to make sure that we meet students where they are ready to learn right now. So in 6th grade, as you know, we have 2 levels. About 80% of our students start middle school in math 6, grade 6 math. And they have the option of staying on the grade level pathway, which leads to studying algebra in 9th grade. About half of the students who start in grade 6 math ultimately end up taking algebra before leaving middle school. So algebra in 8th grade. And there's opportunities for students to move to that pathway, either in incoming 7th grade as they transition from 6th to 7th into our grade 7 math accelerated course, or they might stay on the grade level pathway for 7th grade, and then from 7th to 8th, make that switch to the algebra pathway. So again, typically more than 50% of our students study algebra in the 8th grade. For the students who begin their middle school math journey in Math 6 Accelerated, they may continue on that pathway and take algebra in grade 8. Or if they demonstrate readiness for the rigor and pace, they may double accelerate and take a 9th grade algebra course in 7th grade. This pathway is appropriate for a very small group of students who are generally in the 95th percentile nationally. Our pathways are open, not fixed, and we continually monitor throughout the year, and specifically in the fall, teachers look and ensure that students are in the right place. We move students when necessary to make sure all our students are set up for success. Developing a strong conceptual foundation of mathematics at the middle school level is critical for students to be successful in their future mathematics study. Now, Eric will describe the many pathways available for students in our high school.
Hello. I'm not going to go into great detail. As you can see, we offer a lot of courses at the high school. And the thing I think it's important to emphasize right now is that, similar to the middle school, you're not locked in to one pathway. There's plenty of flexibility and chances to move to a course that is more appropriate for the student's ability level. So I think that's the big takeaway, and we probably don't need to go into all the nitty-gritty detail of all these fun arrows.
The main thing, let me just go back to that slide 1 second. The main thing that we want to make sure the parents see is, depending on the pathway that they end on in middle school, obviously depends on how they start into high school. And like Eric said, once they're in high school, there are many different options. About 1/3 of our students start in Algebra 1. Okay, thank you. Now we're going to describe the different courses offered in 7th grade.
So our grade 7 math course prepares students to take algebra either in 8th grade or 9th grade. A student in Math 7 demonstrates understanding of key grade 6 concepts, does benefit from occasional reteaching and scaffolding of challenging concepts, is developing procedural fluency and accuracy, and is progressing towards independence in solving non-routine and critical thinking problems. Our grade 7 accelerated course prepares students to take algebra in 8th grade. And in a grade 7 accelerated student, the difference really is that student demonstrates a deep understanding of previously taught concepts, retains presented concepts and does not require reteaching, is procedurally fluent, flexible, efficient, and accurate, readily tackles non-routine and advanced critical thinking problems independently. That's kind of a key difference. While all students have that opportunity, the grade 7 accelerated student is able to and expected to tackle those types of problems independently. And the grade 7 accelerated student is not only an independent learner, but also an independent thinker. Our Algebra in grade 7, as I had spoken about before, is really intended for the student who is everything that I described in the grade 7 accelerated student, but who is really ready for the pace and rigor to learn 7th grade standards, 8th grade standards, and algebra standards in 1 year as a 7th grader. This is a very small group of students, students that are in the top 95th percentile nationally, typically.
Hey, that's me. Good morning again, everybody. I'm just going to explain a little bit about the overarching view of the math placement process, and then I know there are some questions that are specific to that that we will get into. But just to take a look, these are the 3 main criterion that we look at in deciding the most appropriate placement for each of our students, beginning with NWEA map, which at the middle schools we've used, I believe, the longest in the district. I think we're about 7 years. If you're not familiar, I think most people are at this point, but if you're not familiar with NWEA map, NWEA stands for Northwest Evaluation Association. MAP is measures of academic performance. It's an adaptive assessment, meaning that as students answer questions correctly, it gets a bit more difficult. If they answer a question incorrectly, it gets a little bit less difficult to arrive at the best place that a student is ready to learn. It really does measure growth in progress and provides us key insights into a student's strengths and then some areas that we can target for improvement. So we found it to be a very helpful tool. The second part is a summative test average. That's really the common unit assessments across the grade level. And we're really looking at how students have performed to help determine the best placement. Then, of course, teacher recommendations based on math practices. And just to go into some depth about what those math practices look like in real time, it's certainly the ability to be able to effectively communicate mathematical thinking within the confines of a classroom. That's really vital for a teacher to be able to appropriately assess the student's depth of understanding. Self-advocacy is also, quite frankly, self-advocacy is something as soon as students begin middle school, we talk about the importance of self-advocacy and being able to speak for yourself and really being able to talk about needs. And it's helpful for us to be able to appropriately assess where a student is best ready to learn. And then levels of engagement are also very important, especially as you get into the higher levels of math, because of how fast and how quickly sometimes those courses move. The ability for students to remain focused and engaged is also really important. So in terms of the accelerated grade 7 math, we're looking at meeting 3 out of the 3 criteria in order to be recommended for that course. However, there is a waiver process, and we will get into some there. I know there are already some questions about that, but just to give some overview about that, we are always open to conversations with parents about where a student is best ready to learn and why we believe the criteria meet a student in a particular class. So we always encourage parents to always reach out first to the teacher to have that conversation. And if at the end of that discussion, there's not alignment, then certainly the administrator and the department leader would be happy to sit and speak with a parent regarding whether waiver is an option and what that might look like. So 6th to 7th grade, this is for entrance into algebra. Again, it's the same 3 criteria that I just described: the NWEA MAP score, the summative test average, and then the same process as far as teacher recommendations are all, again, in play for this course. The main difference here is that there are not waivers into grade 7 algebra. However, if a parent feels strongly that a student this is not the proper placement, then we will meet as a team and see if there may be an option for an additional critical thinking assessment. Just as my conversations with parents all the time, I emphasize how critical it is for students to be able to be appropriately challenged, yet find success in math, especially in this fickle age of middle school. We really feel that it's so important for a student to be appropriately placed. we're certainly open to that conversation. And it's just part of the process for us to be able to sit down and talk about that together.
So now we're going to move into, Myra's going to move into describing the grade 8 course options.
So our grade level course, Math 8, students are able to apply key grade 7 concepts. They benefit often from reteaching of presented topics or topics perhaps that were presented earlier in the year, and even at times reteaching of previous 6th and 7th grade concepts that we need to jump off of. Students in Math 8 are developing procedural fluency and accuracy. Some of them still struggle with those calculations of fractions and integers, and we continually reinforce those. Students often require teacher guidance when conversing about mathematics, helping them to form the ideas, get the right vocabulary. It's not as natural for them. Students are also progressing towards independence in solving non-routine and critical thinking problems. Oftentimes, Math 8 students need a fair amount of scaffolding to get started on a critical task and to help them move through it. Algebra 8 students apply understanding of previously taught concepts from 6th and 7th grade. They do that readily. There's very little reteaching of those previously taught concepts. They can bring them back to the forefront of their brain as they need them. Algebra 8 students are procedurally fluent and accurate. They can calculate with ease so that we can truly focus in on the concepts that are being taught. Also, Algebra 8 students are developing independence in problem solving of non-routine and critical thinking problems. However, they don't require much guidance from the teacher. A lot of that guidance is created through collaboration with peers as they talk about problems and argue their thoughts. So it's much more of an independent process as they gain that independence. Geometry, that is our 2 years above grade level course. And a student in geometry demonstrates deep understanding of the algebra concepts. They know those well and can bring those concepts back as we apply them in our geometry. Students also retain presented concepts. They just don't require reteaching. They really get it the first go around. Students are procedurally fluent, flexible, efficient, and accurate. They are very good about talking math and arguing their position. They readily tackle those non-routine and advanced critical thinking problems with very, if any, guidance from a teacher. And they truly do argue their positions. And a student in geometry is an independent thinker, not just an independent learner.
So now we're going to talk about the math placement process in 8th grade, into 8th grade. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. And just not to be repetitive, but to show that there's consistency, it's the same 3 criteria as previously described. So it's the MAP score from the spring, it's the unit or summative test average across the grade level. And then again, it's the same ideology as far as the math practices in the classroom. So we're really looking at, as Myra really articulately described, effective communication in terms of mathematical thinking, depth of understanding, that self-advocacy piece that we spoke about, and level of engagement. Those are all critical. And in this course, it's meeting 3 out of 3 of those criteria. But again, we are open to discussion. There is a waiver process that we can go through. Now, a little bit different in geometry, as Myra indicated, it's 2 grade levels above, and therefore algebra is a requirement for a student to be able to take geometry in grade 8, and therefore, if that hasn't happened, there's not an ability to be able to waiver into this course.
Okay. So thank you so much to our teacher leaders for those descriptions of the courses. I hope that families found that to be very helpful because I really think they highlighted those key dispositions and also gave families an idea of what percentage of students are actually in those courses to just give you a better understanding of the pathways and how many different kids are on those pathways. So we have a bunch of questions that are popping up on our Google form now. So I'm going to kind of lead and distribute the questions as they come in. So the first question is about this specifically what our criteria is across the different transitions. So 6th into 7th and 7th into 8th. So does one of the math leaders want to take that and answer that?
Sure, I'll take the 6th into 7th question, and then Myra can handle 7th and 8th. Can we put that slide perhaps back up that had that? So the Math 7 accelerated. Not sure, is it slide 6, I think? Or slide?
I believe it's slide 11.
Okay. Yep, that one. Perfect. Okay. So the criteria for a student to be considered for grade 7 accelerated math, we're looking at for their NWEA MAP score to be 235 or better, and to have demonstrated good understanding of their grade 6 content by having a summative test average of 85% or better. And as Tim explained, the teacher recommendation, that they would have the teacher recommendation as well. Okay, and
next slide.
Moving ahead for the algebra. The algebra course, as we described, is really designed for a small number of students, those who really are quite advanced and ready for to be a 2-year ahead of grade level. So we're looking for MAP scores. We have found students with MAP scores in the 95th percentile nationally are the students who this course is suited for. That means a MAP score of 250. Summative test average of 90% or better, and a teacher recommendation for this course. I will say for both of these, there is a little band because we have taken some standard error into account. So we've kind of tried to and factor in the COVID year that we've had. So those are our ideal numbers, but we do have a little plus or minus for the standard error and COVID factors built in when we do the placement.
And for 8th grade, to be eligible for Algebra 8, you would need a MAP NWEA score of a 240 or greater, and a teacher rec, and a summative assessment average of 82 or higher. And to get geometry, first of all, you would have to have been in Algebra 7 as a prerequisite, just like in the high school. But your MAP score would be greater than 255, your teacher rec, and a B+ summative test average. And the same thing applies in 7th to 8th, that as we start to look at a waiver process, if your child did not meet those criteria, we did do that standard error again, and there is a band in which if your child falls into that band, then you would be eligible for that waiver process.
Thank you. And yes, Marianne, go ahead.
I was just going to add, as a teacher of both the algebra and geometry, that the geometry this year, the teachers, myself and Ms. Tagney at Scotts Ridge, you have to have been in Algebra 7 to be eligible to take geometry in 8th grade. And it's really going to be handled on a case-by-case basis, that we really are looking and will be reaching out to families if need be, because we want to make sure that students really have that solid foundation in algebra. What has become, our high school teachers have shared with us that often students who struggle at higher level math classes in high school actually do so because they did not gain that really solid understanding, deep understanding of algebra when they took that course. And so it is very, very important to us that all students who study algebra, regardless of the grade level that they do that they leave algebra with that solid understanding that will set them up for success in those higher level math classes in the future. So I just wanted to put that in too. So.
Thank you. So Marianne was answering one of the questions that had already populated the form, and that was about students who are currently in 7th grade and taking algebra. The question was about the placement into geometry in 8th grade. So Marianne was just repeating what we hear all the time and what we know about good mathematicians, and that is that they have a solid foundation in algebra, and that's what provides success for them as they move through the high school. And that's something as a district that we are working on, not just to shore up at the middle school level for kids who take algebra at the middle school level, but also to shore up as students move into high school in that 9th grade year. So all the research and data that we've done, both locally and what we know nationally, this is something that we really want to emphasize. So while placement is an individual conversation, like Marianne said, this is something that we hold to be true and understand to be true. Another question that is related to the criteria, and Tim, maybe you can take this one, is when will these scores be available to parents, or how are they available to parents?
They should be available. We've used now Power School to populate them. So sometime after the test is administered, within the next couple of weeks, we should be able to get those populated into Power School where parents can see them.
And I will just add on to that, that in terms of math placement, May 7th is the date that we are planning on releasing math placement for students moving into 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in the fall. So here's another parent question. If our child meets 2 out of the 3 criteria to place into advanced math, this is a 7th grade student, but wants to try it, are there any options? So it's a current 7th grader who would like to get into advanced math in 8th grade.
So I can field that. If the child was not recommended, then if they fall within that standard error band that we created, then you will automatically, once you contact the teacher, you'll find out if you are eligible for a waiver or not. If you are, then you will contact your guidance counselor and you will get that waiver form from them. If you did not fall in that standard error band, then you are not eligible for a waiver and you would remain in the course that you were recommended for. That doesn't mean that after a summer, if you did a little extra work, after September as the next teacher get to know your child, and we take the MAP score or the MAP test again, and we reassess what your child knows and understands, there's always a possibility that your child could be moved into the course that you're hoping they'll be moved into.
All right, here's a tricky question, and I'm not sure if we can answer it, Marianne and Myra, but we have the email, so if we can't figure it out this second, we can go back to it. What is the standard error band for placement from 6th into 7th? Is that easy to describe verbally, or is that something that we would rather? How is that easy to describe without being able to look at it?
We can, because NWEA does publish the standard error, which is generally ±3. So
Okay,
that's what we used.
Right.
okay, so I hope that answered your question, Jennifer. And parents
We
will
also,
know. Yep,
oh,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. That was for the map. And what we also did with our summative assessment category was we dropped the requirement by, say, 2 points. So if, for example, the in Math 7 Accelerated, the summative assessment to get in was an 85, we dropped that down to an 80. So we dropped things down, not necessarily always five points, but we dropped it down to another category of, say, a B, in order to bring in more possibilities. Okay. So we also did an error in our summative assessment category, in case there was possibly one test that might have been bad, and is dropping that average down, but everything else was solid. So we took that into consideration as well.
Right. And so for parents to understand, we did add this waiver process, and that is where this band is coming from. Because of everything that we've experienced this year, we know that there needs to be a little bit of flexibility. So if you get your placement and you feel strongly that your student really is ready based on what you're understanding about the course, come and talk to the building-based team, because if your child does fall within that range and everyone on your team, your family team, thinks that this is a good idea and it's in the range, then that's an opportunity for you to waive in. So it is a limited waiver, but we did offer that this year just due to the times. And just like Myra said so well, having one test that could have pulled it down that much.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize, if I can, the openness that we approach this process. I want parents that are listening, or some that may be watching this on tape later, to understand is we want you, if you have questions, we realize that parents know their children best. They know those dispositions best. We do our very best to really gather the best possible data to put them in the best possible place to succeed. However, we are open to discussion. We want you to, if you have questions, to ask those questions. We want you to reach out to the teachers. Our teachers really do know your child really well in terms of their mathematical understanding. And so that's a great place to start. And, it's a team decision, and parents are part of the team. And I think that's really important for our parent population to know and understand. And we're always open to having dialogue and discussion. This is certainly not a closed door process. That's why we put the waiver form intact, is to be able to have these ongoing conversations, to get it right, to put students in the best possible place to succeed, and to be appropriately challenged. But as I've always said to parents, I'd much, much rather have a child in a place where they're challenged and finding success than really struggling because we've put them in a place where they are just not meeting success and they're frustrated. And, this is coming from someone who, quite honestly, and I'm sharing this, and I share it with some of my own students here, I struggled in middle school in math. I'm just being really frank. And as someone who found some struggles, I know what it's like not to have that confidence and the importance of that confidence. And so we want to get it right, and we're open to the conversation. And I just want parents not to be unabashed about reaching out to us to dialogue and exchange on it.
So just to clarify, and we've gotten a couple more questions. On May 7th, what parents can expect is that students moving into 6th, 7th, and 8th grade will receive their course placement for the fall. So that's what parents can expect to see. And then if they want to have questions or conversations with their school-based teams, that would happen after that. I think a couple things just to end with, and I am new to this team, but this team has been in this process for many, many years. And a couple insights that they shared with me. One is that based on teachers, understanding of the students who are being placed in their classes, and based on the number of kids that need to be moved per year, we are doing very well. And over the years, we've done better and better. So the other thing that we want you very much to trust is that while your student may not be showing us right now that they're ready for a course that's more advanced, that does not mean that next year in the fall, if they are showing that the middle schools, the teachers and the administrators and the leaders wouldn't recognize that and move your child into the place that best fits where they're ready for learning at that time. So while there isn't total flexibility in math placement. There is always opportunities for movement, and you're lucky to be in a district and to be moving into middle schools or moving through middle schools where teachers and administrators are paying a lot of attention to student placement and progress, and do want students placed in the best places as possible. So movement is possible, but over the years, teachers have received students into their courses in middle school, feeling that the placement is better and better and better. And that's, of course, always our goal. And I think Tim and the math leaders have said it so well. We want the challenge, but we don't want the frustration. Middle school is where you need to build that foundation for math knowledge moving forward into whatever pathway your child decides to take through high school. And we want to make sure when they get there that is really solid and that they gained it at the pace and with the confidence that they deserve, and that will serve them as they move through the next courses. So I'm sure families can tell how lucky we are in Ridgefield to have math leaders and administrators like these on this call, in this presentation, and in your building. So please reach out to any of us with questions, but really if it's specific about your own child, please start with the classroom teacher, and then any of us will be happy to join that conversation. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us live, and thank you for joining us later. And we look forward to speaking with